from the Northwest region and Natalie in the North region. So today we'll get started. And I'm going to start off with reading our speaker's bio. So today we have Chris Clarke. He's a Virginia native, currently serves as a director of Parks and Recreation for King George County, Virginia, where he leads a department offering a diverse array of programs and manages budgets exceeding 1.5 million annually. With over 2 decades of experience in the field, Chris has demonstrated expertise in capital planning, staff development, and implementing innovative strategies to enhance community services. He holds a Master of Science degree from Ohio University with a concentration in recreation studies and is a certified park and recreation professional. Chris is actively involved with environmental issues, including Share the Air, the Plant Central Rap Natives campaign, and has received recognition from Friends of the Rappahannock as a River Steward Award winner. His leadership in projects such as the Tennis Center reconstruction and various park improvements has significantly contributed to the quality of life in King George County. So, Chris, we're thankful that you're joining us today and sharing how King George became smoke-free. So, if you want to go ahead and start sharing, and we'll pass it on to you.
Thanks, Nicole. Excited to be here today. This is it's the whole process has been a whole lot of fun
Great.
to go through with Share the Air. So, is it going to let me go forward? There we go. So, we're going to take everybody through kind of the steps we went through, but also add in the information you need that may affect, how different localities. I've had a bunch of conversations with different localities on challenges that they've had because really I was lucky. It was for me. It was probably the easiest road of any of my colleagues that have had to go tobacco and vape free in their parks. For us, it was really a simple start. Right? We had no defined real rules from the last 15 to 20 years in our parks, and so we had people smoking near kids and playgrounds and in the bleachers, litter, not cigarette litter, and just about everything else around the parks. Dogs off leash, all these fun things. So I started in October 2018, and one of the first things I jumped into with my advisory committee was really setting a set of park guidelines. My predecessor kind of had one, but it had never gone before a board. So in February 4th, 2020, we got our park guidelines passed by our board of supervisors and endorsed. So one of those was no smoking or vaping or tobacco use within playgrounds, picnic shelters, sports fields, bleachers, that kind of thing. So it wasn't the whole park. It was just these specific areas where kids tend to congregate, and people tend to congregate. Then I lucked out at the end of June 2020. King George High School contacted me and said, "Hey, we've got Share the Air contacted me and said we've got these King George High School students and we'd like to speak to you about taking, going to smoke and tobacco free." And I was like, okay, we kind of already are, but come on over, because the dad and me said, let's make some present, anytime we can help kids learn more about presenting and doing these things excites me. So they came and they did a virtual meeting with me in June and explained the whole process and what they would, what Share the Air really meant. And I said, okay, well, our next step then would be to bring it in front of the advisory committee. Took us a little longer than we'd hoped. Took us over 6 months, but we were battling some different things in 2020. So we had a virtual meeting with a regular meeting with the advisory committee, and the students came on, did the same thing. They made a presentation for my advisory committee, which is 5 members. And they had some big questions of how broad would we be? Would it be the whole park? What if, I'm just walking the path around the park and all by myself and smoking? Like, fine. And I'm like, I'm not going out to fight with that person. I really would like to keep tobacco out of participation areas, playgrounds, sports fields, those things. So we brought it back in 2 months. 2 months later, and they unanimously adopted the Share the Air campaign, which got us our beautiful picture that you see here, and got us signed and really put us together as a group. So the biggest thing it did for us was it gave us consistent signage. When we passed the guidelines, we didn't put in. There was no signs. We didn't have funding for signs. What could we do? That was probably the biggest thing that excited me when Share the Air shows up at my door, I said, yes, we will send you all the signs you want. And our school system uses the same campaign and the same signs. They just say tobacco free school instead of tobacco free parkland. And so we put them everywhere. So you see the pictures here, two of them that went up on the backstop of the baseball field, in front of the playground. We started promoting it on Facebook and encouraging our partners like Little League and our youth flag football organization to do the same. And so it really got us going. Got some good feedback from people that were excited that not only was the rule there, but there was some signage to help them defend themselves if somebody came up and wanted to smoke in the middle of the bleachers. We've continued to work with Share the Air. I have done a lot of different things. They were a sponsor. They were a vendor. They've been a vendor at our Family Day event, which is a combined event each spring. It's Parks and Recreation, social services, and our local VFW post. And so we've done two. Well, they've been at three. The first one we didn't have VFW, but we've done three of them now. They've been a vendor. They're out doing their surveys, getting information from people, doing their prize packs, giving out swag. Ayla, who's pictured with me there in the middle, she's been with them since she was a freshman. She's actually a senior this year. I interviewed her for her marketing class because we go in and help with job interviews as professionals. And I was like, wait, didn't you graduate yet? She's like, no, this year. I thought you were a senior the first time I talked to you back in like 2022. So really, they've got a really strong group of kids at King George High School who really want to push the message and spread that, smoking tobacco free is much better for you. And then ongoing, Share the Air has become a big part of the Virginia Recreation and Park Society. They were in our exhibit hall yesterday. Our conference actually ends in about an hour. And so they've been at our exhibit hall. They sponsored the Directors Forum two out of the last 3 years. And they've done sessions. It was fun. We were in Virginia Beach, I want to say, actually, it was when we were in Harrisonburg, the first year coming out of COVID, I guess, and they had, Share the Air was doing a presentation, so I came in and sat in, to support. And it's the same thing. The students are making the presentation. They do a fabulous job. And then the questions come from the professionals like, well, how do we really do this? And they looked right at me and I said, yep, I'm ready. I'll help and provided information to some of these to try to answer the questions of the professionals in the park systems of how we can go about it. And then about a year ago, they did a follow-up interview with me to find out where we were. So it's really a good partnership, and students that I work with frequently now. It's amazing how small a community can be, and you run into these same kids everywhere, and they're excited about what you're doing. So if you're ready to act, here's how you can go about doing this, and it can be a challenge, or it can be as simple as mine. But here's how we work. I think everybody knows Virginia's a Dillon rule state. So as a locality, we can't have any law that we're not allowed to. The state legislature has to allow things to come down. And so tobacco-free park is not one of them. That would have been great. It'd be great if we could convince our friends in Richmond to pass that. And, whether it's the whole park or at least if it's the areas, put some good teeth behind a rule, behind an ordinance. But it's the same thing for us when we do with dogs. We don't have a leash law. There's different areas that have those, but we don't. So we have it in our regulations, and that's a rule. And my sheriff's office really can't do anything to help me. But the first thing I did, obviously, was we reviewed our current regulations. You may have it passed already and endorsed, and maybe then as easy as going, "Hey, help me get signs." But if it's not, you don't have it passed, and you really need to determine what you want tobacco free. How far into this do you want to jump? So for us, it's minimized. It is the congregation areas, the playgrounds and sports fields and picnic shelters. I did not want to try to figure out how to enforce it in a 100-acre park when two guys are out playing disc golf. That's too much of a challenge. They're on their own. They're staying apart. I can't. Yeah, it's just not something I want to go enforce and put my neck out there on. But Henrico County, Orange County are 100% tobacco free. And actually, the big boys, Arlington and Fairfax, Fairfax County is the Park Authority, where they have the same the congregation spaces where it's banned. You can't smoke. So that's the good part. That data will help you to be able to go in and say, hey, here's what we want to do, and here's our friends that are already doing it. So then the next big step really is to get in front of your chief administrative officer, it's county administrator, town manager, city manager, and your attorney. The attorney is going to be probably the most difficult step. I had a conversation with another department in my region last week, and they were ready to do it. They put it in. The attorney goes, "I'm not really sure. Like this is the whole Dillon rule thing. Like I don't know that we can do this, but if you want to use it as an education campaign, you can." And so that's what that locality's adopted. They have the signs. It's an education campaign. It's not. They have nothing they can do to really enforce it, but to put the information out there and hopefully teach people that the importance of not smoking and around others. Reach out to the Department of Health and Share the Air campaign. Both are ready, willing, and able to support. Signs, secession packets, information. Where are these classes? They are there to help. So when you get ready to do it, you have the information when somebody actually asks, because now you've put it on your side, on your parks. We have an advisory committee. I know a lot of parks and recreation departments do. So my advisory committee is they're my big guns. So if I can walk into the board of supervisors and say, hey, I've got a blessing unanimously from the advisory committee or by 4-1 vote, then the board of supervisors will follow. We did not, just because of our order, have to then present to our governing body, but I know plenty of my colleagues have. They bring it into the governing body and hopefully make a strong presentation, and you're good to go. And now it's passed, as a rule or for your locality. So once it's approved, signs and education. And that was the biggest thing for us, is getting the signs out. Lots of great feedback, as I said before, with parents writing, "Thank you so much for putting that up." It helps us, and we celebrated it. So it was everywhere we could put it. Social media, you can get traditional media in. If you're not in a news desert like we are, you get that information out there and really push that you're part of this campaign. I mean, Parks and Recreation, we're always looking for a way to be on in a newspaper, getting good information out. We do it when we put up AEDs in our parks. We do it when you put up these signs. Really teaches, and shows your commitment to health, because it's really an important thing that we strive to do in Parks and Recreation, is improve people's health. So really for me today, I don't know, a brief, it was pretty quick, but hopefully I can answer some questions. So together we can make our parks a breath of fresh air. It really is a partnership. I'm willing to meet and talk with anybody who's working on it, and try to give you some advice or help you drum up some support and do some research to figure out who else is doing these things and ready to go and make as many parks as we can in this Commonwealth tobacco free. Nicole, I guess I'm ready for you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, so much. I liked how you told your story and then you broke it down so that other people can, really understand how they can go. Because I think getting started sometimes is kind of the hardest part, right? Um, and so I know how you said you establish like your part guidelines first, um, and then you talk furthermore into talking to your advisory committee. That's something I'm
Mhm.
interested. Like, how did you because I think one of the big things when you're doing like a policy, is like who are the decision makers, right? And how do you tailor your message to them? Because what your message to like, a parent is going to be different than this. So do you have any guidance or advice for that step?
So, when you get to the guidelines, for me, it was the fact that when I got there, we had none. Most localities do. And so you've got, you ride into a park in Fredericksburg or Fairfax, and there's this big billboard of sign with 1-inch letters on it that was everything you can't do in a park, that none of us read because we're driving past it. But as a park department, we go, hey, we put it up. It's there. You should have read it. Um, so that's the biggest thing, is check your guidelines, check your rules, whatever it is, that see if you already do have it.
Yeah.
But if your rules are from last updated in 1984, you probably don't. And so that's where I have advisory committee. I know a lot of localities do. You've got some sort of citizen committee, or maybe a partial group of your board members or council members. On my previous locality, we had It was a 7 member council, so 3 were part of all each department's little advisory committee. So it was actually council and then the city manager. And so they would meet every month with the department. So you had somebody to bounce it off of. And when you finally got in front of the full council, you already knew whether or not you were going to, because you knew you had, if you had the support of 3 and you go, I'm pretty sure one's going to listen to the 3 and you're going to have. So that's the biggest thing in everything I do. I make sure I shop it with my board and kind of present it to the side because I don't want to walk in and not have and be surprised by the vote. So that's a really important thing in any subject. If you're working in local government, like, none of us want to stand up there and be on YouTube in a recorded thing and fail and get voted down. So if you can shop things around early, it's easier. But yeah, having my advisor committee anytime for everything. If we're raising a fee, if we're completely changing a policy, to be able to stand up and say, hey, these 5 people that you as supervisors appointed to my advisor committee are in who are in agreement for doing this, then it really helps sway the vote.
That's great. And I did want to touch on just kind of going back, the Dillon rule. So just kind of some clarification. Also, Virginia also has preemption. So basically that just means whatever the state rule is supersedes the locality rule, right? So like you said, like you're going to make a rule or a policy, not an ordinance. And so that's the key thing. And so in the chat, we have Jane Flowers, who used to be our program manager. She suggests remind the city or county attorney that they're probably sitting in a building that is smoke-free and maybe not tobacco-free. That is a county policy, not a state law. So again, knowing the difference between, the policy versus law. And then, there are other policies that they have indoor versus outdoor too. So just, I think that's when you're talking to like your attorney or something, and we had that kind of issue with when we're working with colleges as well, because the law is state buildings have to be smoke-free. And we had clarification from the Attorney General that that's like the low, so they can go tobacco-free. The smoke-free isn't the max, it's actually the minimum. And just, I know I said smoke-free and tobacco-free, so just to clarify, smoke-free is any combustible products, and then tobacco-free will include like smokeless tobacco, vaping, e-cigarettes. So I'll see like, especially in restaurants too, and also on the signage, especially for schools, it'll say like all tobacco products, including cigarettes, and they usually, I'm pretty sure, have the picture of like dip, cigarette, and then like a vaping tool. And I know you talked about the schools have a similar sign as well in King George. So prior to Share the Air, Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth, they had a campaign called the 24/7 campaign. And so it was going school district by school district. Again, it was a policy. It wasn't a law because, we can't with the Dillon rule and preemption. And so localities would have this process or this volunteer policy to implement it in their schools. And again, it's, the whole idea is really to create a healthier environment, and also in parks, right? So like people go there to exercise, to go outdoors, and when you're walking outside, you don't want to be bombarded with, a cloud of cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And there's something else I was going to say, but I was talking about something else, so I forgot. And I do like how you also talked about localities, getting examples from different localities. So I wanted to mention there's an organization nationwide called Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights, and they just had like a webinar to really break down how to implement tobacco-free policy. And a lot of the steps they talked about, Chris, you actually included in your PowerPoint too. They just kind of go more in detail where, they talk about, like you said, like when you want something to pass, you're going to talk to, the decision makers, like you said, like you don't want to go in and not know how it's going to go. You want to educate them first, right? And so you educate them and you kind of get them on your side and explain what the benefits are. So it can either be maintenance. So I've heard people talk about, the litter from cigarette butts, even in like public housing when the third hand smoke got on the walls and cleaning that up. So not just health, but also the cost of maintaining it. things like that. So the A&R policy really breaks it down to, even when you talked about like sharing your policy, they even help you break down like the different ways to share that. What else? Okay, I had some questions too. Sorry.
Okay.
There's so many things I want to share. I was like, where am I going? All right. And again, if for the audience, if you have any questions or tips to share, share that in the chat or the Q&A as well. So let's see. My first question I had, um, did you have any pushback from anyone from like when you talked to like the advisory committee? Was it an easy sell, or did it take some convincing kind of storytelling? What was your experience with that?
The big, well, one, because we're doing it online, it made it awkward to get the information out. But thankfully, we're through. Hopefully, we're through that and don't ever have to visit those days again, where everything is virtual. But it did have one member who was very concerned about the person who's going to walk the path or go disc golfing, kind of doing solo activities or with their with one or two people that are friends of their family, and they're going to make the choice whether or not they're going to walk together. So that was where we made sure we were clear that we're looking for these congregate areas where you're going to be a bunch of folks sitting in bleachers or along a ball field fence or in a picnic shelter. The thing that it did do, and that I love, is it gives a mom who's sitting at a playground watching her kids play, and this person walks up and decides, whichever form of tobacco or vape they're using, and they're around everybody else, that they have something to go, excuse me, sir, and point at a sign. And they don't have to be confrontational. They don't have to, get into the whys or whats. They can point to a sign that says, hey, the Parks Department doesn't want you to do that here. And every time it's happened, every time I talk to a parent who's gone through that, the person goes, oh, and walks to the other side of the parking lot, gets further away. And so that's it's just a big help. Just to give us support when we're in the community, because confrontation with other folks is not really, sometimes really can't be fun, or it's folks that maybe want to file that, we have support behind it. To go, hey, there's this sign for tobacco free in this area, then hopefully the person sees it and just goes, oh yeah, I understand, and I'm going to move away to improve the environment for everybody.
I know that you talked about how the consistent signage was really great, and that was something you appreciated. So my question is for the signage, where do you have it? Is it at each of those congregate areas? Is it when you walk in? Is it kind of throughout? I guess what worked for you, and did you have to like add more, or what do you have on that?
Yeah, so it's a line on the big billboard sign that nobody
Okay.
reads because it's little. But when you get to our backstops, depending on the setup, it's on the outside of the field. Sometimes if it's a 4 field clover leaf, it might only be on 2 of the backstops, just because overkill, and the fact that we don't need, I don't know that we need 8 signs in a very small area. It's at the entrance to the playgrounds. It's at the entrance to the picnic shelters while you're walking from the parking lot. And so that's where it goes out. I actually this year, about a year ago, when I did my follow up interview, Share the Air also now has one that says events. And so we put those up at our independence celebration and our family day in the direction when folks are walking, so that, hey, please, there's 3,000 people here on the field. Don't be walking around smoking in the middle of that, just like you would in a mall.
Good to hear, what's worked. And I think also signage helps with enforcement. So like you said, like a mom can like point to a sign, and it kind of helps that confrontation, not be as nerve-wracking or difficult, and just be like, hey, and I think it's also kind of that changing the social norm too. Thinking back as a kid going to restaurants, there's a smoke-free versus not, smoking
Yep.
area, but even in the smoke-free area, you'd smell the smoke and, still have those negative effects. And so, change that social norm, park by park, kind of what VFHY did with schools as well. Now, prior, just like they're doing for Share the Air with their 24/7 campaign in schools, it's now a law. So if we can, change the social norms for parks, hopefully soon, or who knows how it'll be, but, we'll change a social norm and then hopefully become a law as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I missed something in the chat. All right, let me see if I have any questions. quick. And let's see. So we have Pam Ray, who I think is in the Southwest region. She shared, we worked with a locality for parks and recs and stressed the litter/debris from the cigarettes and vape products. We discussed the nicotine danger to staff cleaning up, especially vape pods that leak, and to the public with young children and dogs who may consume discarded butts and pods. With the added risk of illicit drugs and vape devices, the possibility of accidental exposure to the drugs became a great talking point. It is a work in progress. Oh, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really a good tip to share. Thanks, Pam. So, um, wow. Chris, do you know if there was any issues with like litter on your parks?
Litter is not as big of a challenge for us. It hasn't been.
Yeah,
It was really getting folks out of the areas. There's different park properties where there are congregant areas where we will find an abundance of cigarette butts. And then, yeah, it's a man, it takes a lot of man hours to bend down and pick them all up, unfortunately. And with
definitely.
limited staff,
Definitely.
it makes everything a challenge. Um, One that we moved is in our facility, the citizen center. It's a meeting. It really is just a meeting facility. It's not a rec center. Um, our smoke canister, our cigarette canister was right outside the front door. And I'm like, this doesn't help us. We're walking all the way to the front door with it. So we relocated that and kind of put it in its own area, not far from the front door, but hopefully to move people at least away from the entrance so folks can walk in without walking through smoke.
Heard too. So VCU, they do, I forget what it's called, but they go around and they take note of where the cigarette butts are. And so you can kind of tell, where people usually congregate to smoke. And then they can decide, and that's also a tip if I guess people see that that's a great place to put like signage too, to help with reinforcement. And I did hear about people moving the canister, I think I forget what the word is,
Yeah.
but where they put their cigarette butts in kind of further away to reinforce, where that 25-foot rule is or where they're able to smoke. So there's good tips too. And each park and workplace is going to be different. So but like Chris said, he's very open to talking with people. And there's, 24 other localities that have done this. So I'm sure there's something to learn from others, even if it's across the state. Um, but people are usually very willing to share what they've done, what's worked, maybe what hasn't worked. And again, ANR has those guidelines that really break down to, um, they had a webinar and they broke it down to like assessing the current situation, which Chris, you talked about, like figuring out what your guidelines are, right? And I think it's great to have, it's a consistent message and something you can fall back on if it is a huge problem. Educating on the issue, so educating, sharing the information like you talked about, whether that's talking to your advisory council, whether it's talking to the community that comes there, and then advocating for your policy change. And so luckily Chris was very good at that and didn't have to do too much, it sounds like. But also sharing, your whys and things like that. um, so kind of what Pam talked about, the importance of the discarded butts and pods, and the accidental drug exposure and things like that. So just focusing on all the levels of the positive that can come out of it rather than the negative, I feel like really outweighs it and gives a good story. Um, and I think Tiffany, you had a story to tell too, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy. And I think it's really important as we're talking about all this and we're really focusing on, secondhand smoke exposure and cigarette butts that we always want to keep in mind something that I think is very important that 70% of people who use tobacco do want to quit. And policies really help people quit. So just keeping that in mind as we think about how hard it is and maybe it feels like we're taking rights away. The most people, it helps them quit and they do want to do that. So my story is years ago, before I worked in this role, I worked as a health coach for a large insurance company. And so really I focused on behavior change with people. So whether it was with eating or exercise and with tobacco use. And so during that time, a large factory all over the US was going tobacco free. And so a lot of factory workers that I was working with as a health coach came to me with help to get help on quitting. And the first year was a struggle. They were upset. They were, they were mad that this was being taken away from them. But when I looked back and I think about that time as a health coach and what that looked like, that first year being a struggle, and then you look past the first year and it became the new norm. I remember stories of people telling me, I'm saving so much money because I can't smoke or dip or use this much. I'm coughing way less. I feel better. So it was the new norm and it was okay. There was a lot less anger. Sure, I think I still had one or two people, but for the majority, people were really happy with the change that was made over time. And I think too, as we think about, I wasn't on the team that helped to roll that policy out, but thinking about how we're investing in those people's health. We want to help them quit, not just the people that don't use, but we're investing in everybody's health and their family's health. And so how can we really roll that out as positive communication, just like Share the Air has done with bringing in youth and using their their words and their excitement that they bring. So I think just remembering policies help people quit. It's important to know that besides in helping reduce exposure to others, helping people quit, it also reduces the changes of people. It's a preventative. It helps people to not start smoking. It's not a norm. So I just wanted to end on that. Thanks, Nicole.
Great. Thank you so much, Tiffany. I don't see any more questions. Chris, do you have anything that you forgot or you wanted to add?
Yeah. So the other thing that comes in, we know if the support, like Little League International in their rules say that coaches can't, there's no tobacco use around fields and practices when an actual Little League program is taking place. So if you can team up with those groups that are already should be enforcing the same regulations, that really does give you the support. Because for us, 80% of our ball field use is probably Little League. So if we can get them to enforce it, make sure it's not there, then we only have to deal with the last 20%.
It's great to know. Yeah, I feel like, on our side, we're always about policy and, health. And I think from your perspective, you see a different side of it, but that could help us too. So it's great to know that. And thank you for being willing to talk to other people if they have questions too, because I'm sure they're like, oh, what can I do? What did you do? So just sharing your experience, I think, helps people for sure.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, I don't see any more questions. I didn't have anything else prepared. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. So we did share, Natalie in the chat, she did share the air campaign. And so they have resources on there where it's like steps to get started. There's signage, so like what Chris said, they can provide the metal signage. And then I think there was a locality, I forget, but they've already have the signage, but they wanted to brand it with their city. So I think they're working with them. But having that consistent signage, I think, and comprehensive to really explain what is included in the policy really helps again with the education, also enforcement, like Chris was saying. Um, and what else? Okay, so we talked about the Americans for Non-Smokers Rights Foundation. They have webinar series talking about and going through the steps to go smoke-free, tobacco-free, and they even have like a toolkit that really breaks it down step by step, like really to help you. Because I know it can be overwhelming, but just breaking it down to little steps, time by time, it becomes more manageable, right? And we have all those information, and then we will share the recording and Chris's slides, also PDF form in the email later this week. And let me just check. All right. And also, we're a resource too. So if you want more information on going tobacco free, you can reach out to us. We can connect you with Chris or, possibly other localities, maybe one next door to you, to help continue and create, a little area. Because I know some people, I live in Virginia Beach, but I'll go to Chesapeake, Norfolk, for different parks because some have more things that others don't. So, we're all here to share information and share experience and help each other. So, all right. So I'm going to wrap it up. Chris, do you have something last minute? Are you okay?
Nope,
Okay.
again, just reiterate, if anybody needs to reach out to me, please do so. I'm happy to help.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we'll end a little early today. Hopefully that's okay. And just wanted to remind everyone that our next webinar is actually in November. So we're going to be celebrating the Great American Smokeout. So again, one day in November, just to share, to really focus on, you don't have to quit in one day, but today can be day one. And so just a day to share and celebrate people and encourage people to quit. So if you've been watching Tobacco Free Tuesday webinars, since we started, we always do this every year, and there's usually a panel of people who share their quit journey. And usually it's always, everyone's story is so different. So whether it's their workplace went tobacco free and they had, it was harder for them to smoke. So they had to get on the quick journey. So probably they talked to someone like Tiffany in her previous role. So just getting encouragement and hearing what other people have gone through really helps other people understand that they're not alone and their journey is not always linear. It's ups and downs, and that's okay. So again, thank you, Chris, for joining us today and sharing your information. I'm sure a lot of people are going to take this and hopefully implement tobacco-free policies in their parks and their workplaces. And thank you everyone for joining us. So hopefully we'll see all of you again November 19th, and have a great week, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Bye.